why study in Canada? Well, Canada, I think, is the second largest country in the world in terms of land mass. As you can see, it's very, very big. When you compare even Ghana to just, it's still bigger than Ghana. So just imagine how big it is. But what makes Canada special? Because of its diversity, there are so many different cultures here. Two, it's flexible and high quality education, and it's also affordable. Access to scholarship and work opportunities to help and pay your education. Well, this compared their payment system to other countries, I think better. Okay, lower education fees and enjoyed renowned quality of life. You have the same rights as a Canadian citizen. Whatever they enjoy, you do enjoy some in terms of rights. And you could blend into the education system very, very easily. Now, where are the funds in Canada? It's a very big country. Federal government. When I talk about the federal government, let me use a very clear example and say Ghana, like we have Ghana, like the whole, like the scholarship secretariat in Ghana. The second option is the provincial government. So like every region has its own scholarship program that they give to students. And the last one and the most important one is the schools. We have all these scholarships, the federal, the provincial, but all these scholarships always goes through the schools, unlike other countries that you could apply to the scholarships directly. Here, you always have to be nominated through a school. You can't go to the federal government and apply for a scholarship directly, no. You always have to be nominated through a school, except and now let's talk about the federal scholarships. The first and most prized scholarship is the Venia Canada Graduate Scholarship. This is mainly for PhD students if you want to go into PhD research. And I think it's $50,000 per year and it's renewable for 3 years. So, but well, I'll make mention of it later. And this is another one for the social sciences. So if you are in humanities, social science, this is, and all these scholarships are fully funded scholarships. The Canada Graduate Scholarship. Okay, this one is given by the Canadian government, but it goes through, so it's just for master's program. It's usually in partnership with a university. So I know University of Ghana has this kind of scholarship that I know they send letters out mostly, but since they send the emails and most of us don't check, we don't know that there is this kind of program available. It's mostly linked with a university here in Canada. So you come for like a 1-year exchange program, and it's fully funded from your flights to your accommodation and everything. So this is mainly purely master's program. And it's mostly linked to a university in the, so let me say in Ghana. And the NSEC, the Natural Science and Engineering Research Scholarship, this is mainly for the sciences, natural sciences and engineering. This is and all these scholarships are mostly fully funded and they are very, very heavy. And I just, in this talk, I'm just presenting the scholarship that Ghanaians are eligible for. So if you're not eligible for, I won't put it in. So all these scholarships, all Ghanaians are eligible for them. And the Study in Canada Scholarship, that's another scholarship for short exchange. And this even includes undergraduates. So even if you are studying in a normal BSc, but you should go through your home university. Now, the other ones are the provincial scholarships. Canada has 13 provinces, and each province has its own scholarship board. So let's start with the first one, is Alberta. I won't make mention of all because there are so many scholarships that are in each province. The province of Alberta has British Columbia, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Islands, Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Yukon. I didn't make mention of one because, okay, let me go back and show you the map. Okay, so this is the map of Canada. Most of the people in Canada are concentrated in this greater part, Ontario. Next to Ontario is Quebec, but this is an English-speaking province and this is a French-speaking province. But most of Canadians or most people who school are within this area, Ontario and Quebec. Others are also uphill here. You could school here, but when you start going up, most people don't like going up just because it's very cold. But they also have funds. As I made mention of Nunavut, Yukon, they all have funds. But the other side is you have to be in the province before you are awarded all these funds. Okay. That's something I wanted to make mention of so we don't miss out on it. Now, the next thing is schools. Well, I consider the schools as the major point of all you have to go through the school. You have to be nominated by a school, else the government of Canada is not going to give you that scholarship. The other way is when you are applying for a program, let's say you want to apply for a school like Concordia, McGill, UBC, in the application process, you could state that, okay, they should consider you for any scholarship that the school had or that the department had. And mostly they are given in the form of teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So these are scholarships that most people get upon applying to the school. And as Dr. made mention of, special ways that you could do. And these are not evaluated by just a single professor. This is evaluated by a whole committee. So mostly it's very competitive and hard to get by. I know most people are doing it. Now, the last, and I always say the best resource to get funding in Canada, which I know most of my friends here got through a professor. Getting in contact with a professor in the system. These are some of the scholarships, and I think it will be shared. Okay, let's talk about this very much, funding from a professor. In Canada, most of the funds that goes into their research, goes into their education, goes into their innovation, goes to the research professors, goes to tenured professors. And to talk of, they get a lot of money. When you read the papers, almost every day, professors are getting grants each day in, day out. And those grants are supposed to be used to fund projects. And most of them don't want to do this work themselves because they want to spend most of their time writing more grants, getting more fellowships. So they like to outsource students from all parts of the world. Just to talk about my own research group, I'm a Ghanaian. I have one guy from India, one from Italy, and one from Canada. It's a diverse group. My professor is also an Italian. They are the same for other groups. You won't see like, okay, this one group, they are all from Ghana, they are all from Canada. No, it's always diverse because they always want diversified groups to get good ideas. And how do they recruit students? They recruit students based on research interest and well-crafted statement of purpose. Teachers, later I will show you from my center how to get a professor. Mostly they have open positions. And just to know, you shouldn't be always like be in the field, because I have a bachelor's and an MPhil in material science, but now I'm reading something entirely different, reading condensed matter. It's because I was able to align my interest to the interest of the current professor I'm working, and my statement of purpose was crafted based on that. He said, okay, this guy has the potential to work in this field. Though I wasn't in that field, but he could pick me into that field just because I aligned my interest to his interest. I researched on his topics, his publications, the way he used to write his papers. And I know those of you in the science field, you know that I find there are theories. Each professor wants his theory to be this way or that way. If you want to get the program, usually craft it to suit the professor's interest. Later, when you have the program, you can argue your points out that this or that. But if you want the program, usually you have to align to the interest of the professor. One, two, you should reach out to them, usually through their institutional emails and their prospective social media handles that I'll make mention of, that most people don't really know how this thing, as if they have emails or social media handles, how to find them. I find it surprising. Most of these projects that Doc talked about in his presentation are found on LinkedIn. When you go on LinkedIn and you just search for PhD projects or master research projects, it will surprise you that there are a lot of topics that will pop up. I remember when I was looking for a PhD program, someone told me to go to LinkedIn and search for programs. And when I did search, I saw a lot of programs, especially in Germany, because at that time, the Max Planck Institute was looking for students to work on projects that they have fund for. Because when you get the funds, there's a time limit to use those funds. So you have to get students to pay them with those funds and work on the project. The other handle is Twitter. Most of these ads are on Twitter about professors or people recommending people on Twitter. I know that one is there. The third one is the school's websites. Most schools' websites advertise projects that need students to work on, and research institution websites. And the last one I'd like to talk about is conferences. I had my first scholarship through a conference, actually in Ghana, at University of Ghana. There was this conference organized by the African Light Source, and so many professors, scientists around the world came. And most of the times when we see them, we think they are just tourists who are just don't know their whereabouts and they want to see the sites. At times, just get close to them, talk to them. He might not have funds, but his friends might have funds. The guy I spoke to wasn't a professor, but he was a senior engineer at Stanford. He couldn't hire students because he was an engineer. He wasn't a professor, but he could get funds. So mostly when these whites or these foreigners come to conferences, just don't go and take pictures with them. Try to interact with them, try to know what they do, try to take interest in their personal lives, and know they might have funds somewhere, or even if they don't have the funds themselves, their friends or colleagues might have the funds that they could recommend you to. And mostly when you are recommended, that's the surest way of getting a PhD program. My master's was through him. He got the funds, linked me to a professor in Stanford, and that was it. And my PhD was the same recommendations. My professor recommended me to a different professor, and that was it. He was actively searching for students then. And as I said, recommendations. And I'll give you a clear example of my current institution. So this is my current institution, Institut National de la Recherche Scientifique. When you go on the site, I think later I do post it, you just go opportunities. We want masters or PhD projects. And my institution is purely a research-based institution. institution, you hardly take courses. You purely have to do research. So these are professors who are looking for students or interns. And usually when you apply to them, some might reply, some might not reply, depending on how you craft your letter or how you introduce yourself and your publications. But some will respond. This is just a few. I think later if the link is sent, you could go through, and this is purely a science-based institution, natural science and applied science. And just to talk about the initial scholarship that I spoke about, the VENIA, the NSERC. When you are in such institutions, it's easy for you to get them because those schools they have to nominate students for the scholarships because the money is always made available by the government of Canada or by the province, and they have to make use of those money. So they will always have to nominate students for those scholarships. And it doesn't matter if you're a Ghanaian or from in any other country, most of the times you are highly eligible for these scholarships. And I think this is mostly this I think is the most effective way to go through if you want funds to study in Canada. It's mostly going through the professor, find funding from the professors. And they do full funding. They fund everything. They fund your fees and give you stipends at the end of the month. So and just let me put it this way: in North America and specifically Canada, it's very hard for you to apply to a scholarship program. Like I'm applying to George Vanier, applying to NSERC. No, you are not. They won't even look at your email. But you always have to go through a university. And with some of them, you have to at least pass your first year. So the problem mostly starts with how you go through the first year. And that's what I think it's mostly important to get the funding from a professor by sending them emails. And how do you find them is the ways I'm showing you. And you could just search for a school, look for professors, and just send them random emails. But those emails should be crafted. And most of the sites they have projects that need students to work on them. You don't necessarily have to be equipped already, but you have to show them that you make good use of the money. Because I recently, most of the LinkedIn posts that I've been seeing, most of them are like, it's better to hire someone and train the person than to hire someone who thinks he or she already knows the concept. Because now they want to coin people that understand their principles. So mostly you don't have to be in the field, but you have to have the basic knowledge in the field. I read engineering, now I'm reading physics. It's a bit tough, but it just gives me time to learn more and know more. Okay, what happens when you are in and you want to stay in Canada? One, you have to know their transportation system. Housing, I'll say housing in Canada, depending on where you live. On the map I showed you, from top to down, the higher you go, the higher. So from British Columbia, it's very expensive to live. But as you come down, the prices tend to reduce. So you have to find a balance in between those things. You earn more, but you pay more. You should know about their cultural differences. And here, when I mean cultural differences, it involves a lot. It involves so many things. You have to know about their social insurance number. In Ghana, we will say the 10 number. Here it's very, very important. Without it, you can't do anything. You have to know about their tax systems and finding job. Okay, let me chip in this. If you're a student in Canada, now, okay, last year they made amends, so those who were in got the chance. But now And before, if you're a student, you have the chance to work 20 hours a week. Whether you're on scholarship or you are not on scholarship, you can work at most 20 hours a week. The government allows it. You should know the seasons and the clothing to wear. And you should mostly register with a Ghanaian community. It can be a church or a student association. And it's always good to find yourself in this kind of place because they will help you and know some other petty scholarship opportunities or any money that the government might share that you might not know. Okay, after school, what do you expect? Most Canadian schools, especially if you study for a master's or a PhD, you are due for a postgraduate work permit. And this depends on the number of years you studied. If you did a 1-year master's, they usually give you a year to stay. If you did 2 or more, you have, I think, 3 years of postgraduate work permit. And this is just to help you settle in and to get your permanent residence through other means. And to talk about the getting jobs here, in Canada, I think most of their problem is they don't have the labor force. So last year, they had to make amendments to allow all students who were in the system work like normal Canadians. So those who were here last year and had study permits are allowed to work just like normal Canadians. So you could work 24 hours in a day, they don't care. So far as you are still a student, but that's for those who were here last year. So this tells you that if you are in the system, it's very easy for you to get jobs because even undergraduate students do get jobs even before they complete school. And the same has to do with masters and PhD students. And it's easy to, not easy, but it's kind of a good way to get your permanent residence because I know those who came here for 1-year masters, most of them after a year, you have a better chance of getting the Canadian permanent residence. And the ways you could use the federal skilled worker program based on some work you did way back in Ghana or what you did here, your Canadian, some of the works that you did here, the federal skilled and being nominated by a province if you've worked in the province for 2 years. And thank you. And if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Benson. That was insightful. That was great. There are a few questions that our participants are asking. Someone is asking that if you are applying to study in a college other than a university, are there the availability of some funding for those who want to study in a college?
So as I said, well, there's always a fund available. There's always a fund available, that's for sure. But the problem is you always have to be in Canada to get those funds. For colleges, universities, you always have to be in Canada to receive all those funds. So there are surely funding for colleges, undergraduate students, but you always have to be in Canada. If you don't get a funding from a professor forehand, you always have to be in Canada to receive any funding from the Canadian government or the provincial government.
Thank you very much. And I would like to share my personal experience to our participants, especially those who have the desire to move to Canada to pursue higher education. Remember that in as much as you are meeting the requirements set up by the committee or maybe the scholarship committee, it is important to develop, let's see, a relationship. You see, remember that you are not the only potential applicant or prospective applicant. there are a lot of students across the world targeting that particular spot. So what makes you stand out, aside you meeting all the requirements? This is where relationship comes in. So in my case, when I reached out to the professor, in fact, I went to the school's website and then I did a thorough research regarding each and every faculty member. So I go to the university's website. I know that, okay, these are my research interests. So I make sure that I read extensively on the faculty members so that I will identify that, okay, this is where my research interest is. So then I will reach out to the professor. So after I reached out to the professor, in fact, some responded. I think about 2 or 3 responded, even though I had reached out to more than 5 faculty members. So it was just 2. And unfortunately for me, the one who responded told me that his research interest is in another field. So what he did was he rather recommended me to another faculty member. So I was just there and I had an email from the professor who is currently my supervisor. And then he reached out to me that he's had a conversation with this professor and then they've accessed my credentials and he's willing to work with me. So this is what I did. Whilst I was in Ghana, I wasn't doing it in a way that it will irritate the professor. Don't try to be a nuisance to the professor. Just be mindful of how you go about it. So what I did was every month, I make sure that I reach out to my potential supervisor. I'll send him a very nice email just to keep in touch with him. So along the line, he told me that I should make sure that I check on the graduate chair, who is who chairs the committee whenever they are having this kind of discussion regarding making decisions as to who to give this funds to or who to be admitted into the program. So that was how I developed that relationship with him. So I continue with this relationship over, let's just say, like over 6 months. So I was kind of familiar with him. So before the final decision came, we had a conversation regarding that. And then he told me that I'll receive a response from the graduate chair. And then hopefully I had a response and I was selected for the graduate assistantship. So I kept on checking up on him, sending him messages. Be mindful of the sort of message you send. This is very important. Don't just send any message. Just be mindful of the sort of message you send. Stand out. And trust me, when I got to Canada, he helped me because like he knows the system here. He was able to walk me through what I should do, how I should go about things. So anytime I have any problem, I reach out to him and he's always willing to help me. So when you meet the requirements, that is not just to try as much as possible to develop a professional relationship with your potential supervisor, which is very, very important. And I believe that when they are in the room deliberating as to who to select, because of the relationship you have with him, he will speak on your behalf. So there is also another question that says that is just like someone asked Dr. Osei Bunsu, that is the application tied to the scholarship opportunity. Once you gain admission, do you automatically qualify for, let's say, availability of funding, especially if your program is a research-based program?
Okay. So it depends. When you apply to a school and based when you apply, you pick the option to be considered for any form of financial assistance. And if you apply to the department or the school in general and you not apply to your professor, they will inform you if you were eligible for the funding or not. So in that case, you might be a teaching assistant or a research assistant, and that will be specified in the letter. But it's always good to always tell them to consider you if you are eligible for any funding. But if you applied through a professor and he gave you the assurance to apply, you know for sure you have funds, because he will surely fund you. But if you apply to the department directly or the school directly, it will be specified in the admission letter whether you got the funding or you didn't receive the funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was very insightful from